Started. Hi guys. Thanks for joining us tonight. My name is Melissa. I'm going to be doing a little talk here about doing mobility for cyclists. My goal is to give you a little bit of sort of basic background information, sort of like a good old school grade school presentation. Tell you what we're going to talk about, review our points, and then I'll do some demonstrations so that we can follow along. And then I'll give you some resources at the end. The whole point of this for me is that I would like to be able to give you sort of three main body parts and then almost like a quick sequence that you could do for each area, because otherwise mobility becomes a really daunting topic. There's so many things we can work on, so many things we can stretch, so many things we can release that a lot of times people get to this feeling like, I don't even know where to start. So I want to give you a basic blueprint that is helpful for all cyclists, whether you're a road cyclist or a Peloton or spin class, that sort of thing. And then kind of give you a roadmap for it. And then you can kind of go on your own from there. So let's do a little talk first about just generally mobility for cyclists. So, okay. So what I like thinking about this is that this is basically like basic body maintenance so that you can prevent pain and injury. So why do cyclists need mobility? So I just pulled this stock image. I don't actually know these people. Cycling is a low impact sport, of course, but unfortunately it does keep us in a position that's very similar to the hours that we also spend sort of hunched over our desk or slouched on our sofa, or these days with work from home, we have like a lot of us have very awkward work from home setups where we're reaching or we're hunching, that sort of thing. So this sort of flex forward position, just like cycling, can lead to shortened hip flexors, weak glutes and core, ineffective hamstrings, this sort of flexed spine, rounded shoulders. Even if you train properly and your form is perfect, the very nature of the cycling position is very repetitive and it's very static, and it will eventually start to create imbalance. Muscles do not naturally maintain their optimal length. Joints will not keep their full mobility on their own. And the body will really always take the path of least resistance, which means that it will adapt to the positions that you spend the most time in. So if you're at a desk here, like this over your computer all day long, and then your break is to get on your bike, and then you're here on your bike for hours at a time, your body is going to adapt to that position. So stretching and soft tissue release and strengthening should really be thought of basic body maintenance, especially for cyclists. If you don't put oil in your car, it's going to break down. And if you don't maintain your body, it's going to break down. So let's not do that. So why do cyclists need mobility? This is pretty much exactly just the things I said. And what are the goals of mobility work? Move my face out of the way here. What are the goals of mobility work? Obviously, improve flexibility, improve joint mobility and range of motion, improve muscle performance, because when your joints and your muscles can move through their full arc of motion, they can generate more power from you. Decrease risk of injury, because the more variation you have in your movements and your mobility, the less likely that you're going to jam into one area, get imbalanced, and get injured. And also the speed recovery. Honestly, like a lot of this soft tissue work we do is really to sort of help our body recover from the demands that we're putting on it during our training. What can benefit? This is a great question. So people always are like, well, I have this thing, is that I don't think mobility is going to work for that. But that's not true. Knee pain will benefit from mobility, low back pain, neck pain, hip pain, shoulder pain, really everything else pain. A stable pelvis is super important to prevent back pain during cycling. If you're on your bike and you're sort of rocking or flopping side to side, you're going to create overuse of the low back muscles, increase forces on your spine. So not only do you need a strong core to stabilize that, but you need really mobile hips. You need to be able to bring those hips up to you in order to keep the spine from compensating. You don't want to compromise your back. Even off the bike, Neck pain is caused by rounded shoulders and a stiff upper back, sort of this position that we get into on our desk. And the ability to tap into your lat strength and keep your trunk stable, part of that comes from the ability to like get your back in an upright position and get your shoulders back. This ability to tap into that strength and keep you stable will keep you more upright, give you a better head position. It'll decrease stress on the neck while riding. Your knees are meant to be a hinge joint. They're meant to bend and flex in one smooth movement, but muscular imbalance between the quads and the hamstrings and decreased flexibility in the hips can wreak havoc on the knee joint and can put a lot of stress with the patellar tendon. It can cause anterior knee pain, which is sort of like this patellar pain we get, gives you IT band. A lot of that can be stemmed from mobility deficits, which then drive into these repetitive patterning. So another question too I get is, when do I perform this? The answer is that dynamic mobility before a ride can help improve your performance by allowing you to perform optimally. And regular mobility work after riding will combat these repetitive positions in the saddle and prevent injury. Soft tissue release like foam rolling or lacrosse ball can decrease soreness. It can speed your recovery time. It can get you back on the bike quicker. What tools to use? The foam roller is really great for large flat muscles like your quads, your IT band, your inner thighs. In the upper body, I love to use it on the lats and the lower back. The lacrosse ball is great for glutes, low back, calf, hamstrings, as well as for pecs and posterior shoulder. I'm not going to so much get into those today, but I will give you a little bit of like added nuggets on the slideshow that I'll share after this presentation. Smaller trigger point balls or golf ball are good for little sprouts like arches of your feet or your shins, that sort of thing. And does the order matter? So this is a question. Oh gosh, skipping ahead. Does the order matter? And the answer is yes and no. Mobilizing shortened and overworked areas first will help you access more range of motion into the opposite direction. So I tell people, it's like, if you're trying to get your shoulder back, right? I'm trying to get my shoulder back. I'm trying to get my shoulder back by using the muscles on the back of my shoulder. But first I need to access the ability to get my shoulder back there, and then I can strengthen back there. So yes, in that sense, order does matter. So you should be releasing certain areas before you try to mobilize in the other direction. A repeatable sequence too will make it more likely you'll actually do it at home. So I like to tell people the order matters more for you, for your ability to remember what you're doing, to sort of keep on track, and to kind of bang through this day in, day out every day. But all bodies are different. If you find yours wants to flip flop the order, go for it. If you say like, ugh, I don't like doing this, the couch stretch first, I would rather do the inner thigh rock back, totally great, go for it. I get this every day from patients. My body doesn't move like that. I can't arch like that. My leg doesn't go that way. My shoulder doesn't move like that. And the answer is that mobility work is hard. And we have trained our bodies not to move like that. 10 years ago, 15 years ago, when we were children, we moved that way. We just told our body that we couldn't move like that. There are, of course, like some strange anatomical things that you can't, and that is not within the scope of this chat. But day by day, if you put in the work, your muscles and joints will become more pliable and you will have more range of motion. If we talk about yoga is as a practice, and it's always a practice. You are never perfect at yoga. You are never perfect at mobility. All of this is progress. All of this is a journey, and all of this will make you a better cyclist. So it was an A to Z story to get to where you are. So we really have to rework it backwards. So give it some time, learn new patterns, put in the work. I promise that you will see results. Okay, the ground rules for mobility are listen to your body and inch closer to mobility over time. Don't force it all in day one. Like, I don't want anybody to go out there and like throw themselves into these mobilizations and then come back and say like, oh, now I'm way stiffer than before. Like, let your body tell you where to go, let your body set the pace and sort of listen to it and let it grow over time. Some stiffness is to be expected, particularly if these are not motions that you have done in a long time, if this is not something you've never done before, or if you just been kind of hauling away at your Peloton every single day all through quarantine. Like, we probably got a little bit of patterns to unwork, but don't work through really sharp pain. If you're like, this is sharp pain and it's getting worse while I work on it, stop, call a PT, call me, email me, and there might be other things that we need to do to work around that. So, okay, so here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to give you a lower body sequence. I'm going to give you a chest and thoracic spine, that's upper back and sort of neck focus sequence. And then I'm going to give you a low back sequence. And this is the way that I would do those three sequences. I would do those three areas in that order. First, I would do my lower body so that my hips were open in order to then get into my spine. Then I would do my upper back, so I was able to open my chest and my thoracic spine before I got into my low back. And then I would do my low back. If that doesn't work for you, feel free to swap these. Sometimes coming right off the bike, people want to do a little bit of shoulder opening first. At some point, we'll probably do an on-bike mobility lecture. I definitely, like, right when I'm done with the bike, there is some calf and hamstring stretching I do on the bike. There's a little bit of hip stretching. And almost always when I'm on my road bike, I'm taking a couple of breaks during super long rides, maybe like every 10, 15 miles or so, to do some upper body stretching, some upper body stretching, and some cervical mobility just to keep myself loose during the bike. But that's all really on bike. So let's start with the lower body sequence. I'm going to give you a quick preview, and you'll see that I have sort of given instructions and pointers on each one of these things that I'm going to talk about in the PowerPoint. So if you need to refer back, you can. I can also add some links. We have some videos online. But in the meantime, I am going to actually stop this share and just demonstrate these all. Each one of these sequences is about 4 minutes long. So it might take a little bit longer here as I walk through some explanations, but each one's about 4 minutes. So bear with me. If you have any questions, jump in on the chat link, ask Anthony. He's here to help you. He knows this stuff. So, and then he can always sort of direct it to me if he needs to. Okay, so let's start with our lower body sequence. So I have my handy dandy formula right here. What we're going to do is we are going to start with some just easy soft tissue release. So with the idea, when I'm using a foam roller or a lacrosse ball or anything like that, I am not trying to mash my muscles to the point of no return and beat them into submission. What I'm trying to do is just trying to improve a little bit of fluid flow, decrease some of my nervous system tensioning to the area, and allow my body to relax a little bit. So for the foam rollering on the quads, I'm going to say do about 45 seconds to 60 seconds per leg. That puts you in a 4-minute mobility sequence at about 1.5 minutes of foam rolling. So take the foam roller like this on your belly. I generally think that I'm going to do about 3 spots on each leg. So we're going to start, here's the way. We're going to start on the front of the leg. So I usually do like a little gut check, okay? I kind of roll all the way up and I roll all the way down, and I'm thinking, okay, where are the tightest spots for me? Your spots might be different than my spots. I have a tendency to get really tight about mid-muscle belly and then real close to my knees. So I'm going to start there. So once I've found that spot, I'm actually going to move my leg up and down through the pressure. So for the sake of, again, calling it a repetitive sequence, maybe we say we kick our leg in each spot about 5 times. So 5 times on this leg. Maybe I'm not so tight on the right leg. I find a different spot, kick 5 times. The whole idea of kicking while we're doing it is you're helping to move more muscle fibers through that pressure. You get a little bit more bang for your buck. Also, it's a bit more tolerable than really just cramming yourself and rolling up and down through those really tight muscles. So next, we're going to want to do the outside of the quad. So I'm going to literally roll my body about 45 degrees this direction, prop up like this a little. So the great part for this on the outside of the quads is you're getting into your lateral quad. This attaches right into that IT band. The IT band is a huge tendon, right? It's a big, thick piece of connective tissue. It's really hard if you just try to lay right on your IT band directly on the side to make any effect. So instead, we come into the muscle that attaches underneath the IT band. kick up and down and improve the mobility of the muscle there. So same thing as before, I'm sort of rolling up and down, finding where my more tender spots are. The answer is all of the above. All of these spots hurt. Although I have to say, I've been practicing these releases for this lecture this week, and this is much more tolerable than it usually is. So then after you've done about 30, 45 seconds, you're going to go ahead and roll over, kick up and down on this side. Sometimes patients will say, oh, well, I'm on this. I actually feel this top leg, the inside of my knee feels tender. You can kind of get into that one too if you need to, up and down on the inside of that leg. But you're just kicking up and down, all the way up, all the way down. Sometimes we'll even come all the way up here just below this bone in our hip. I'm gonna come on this side so I'm not facing away from you guys. Just below this bone in our hip into the TFL. So I'm real high on the hip now. Same thing. And I'm just gonna kind of roll up and down, find that spot. On this one, I could maybe pop up and down here. Ultimately, the motion, I try to go in the direction that the muscle is moving, but I'm not wedded to that. You can kind of move in any direction that your body wants to. Okay, so now that we've opened up the front of the hips, we're gonna use the foam roller just as a prop. So we're gonna do a half kneeling hip flexor stretch. Sometimes people call it a couch stretch. You can think about it, if you had this leg up on a couch or a table, you would get into the quad a little bit more. So with this foam roller on the side of the leg that's going forward, prop up like this. The key with this is you really want to actually squeeze the glute. So I'm trying to get way up high in the hip flexor. So squeeze your glute, tuck under, okay? And then push forward a little bit. So in a sequence, I tend to think of myself like, I'm gonna tuck, 2, 3, 4, push forward, maintain that tuck, 2, 3, 4. Now I'm gonna add a side bend, 2, 3, 4. Okay, so if I was going through it on the other side, I would foam roller here, and you can absolutely kneel on a pad if this is uncomfortable on your knees, something like that. Foam roller here, same leg up like this, squeeze your butt, tuck. You should really feel this really high up at the top of the quad in the hip flexor here. 2, 3, 4, push forward, maintaining that tuck. 2, 3, 4, reach up, and then side bend towards your foam roller. That's what it's there for, so you don't fall over. 2, 3, 4. If you're really craving some more lower quad opening, you could use, and I don't have one in here, but you could use a yoga block or something like that and prop it here underneath your foot so you get a little bit more angle at the knee, and then you'll get a bit more quad opening with that. Okay, the last part of this hip opening is going to try to get into inner thighs. So we're going to do a rock back, all fours, one leg sticks straight out. So you can see I'm sort of like in this half kneeling position. On all fours, just rock back. 3, 4. The reason I picked 4 is because when I practiced this, if I did about 4 or 5 counts on everything, it worked out to be just about 30 to 45 seconds per side, which seemed pretty realistic to me. I can't say that I'm going to get off a 45-minute spin class or an hour on the Peloton or 4 or 5 hours on the road bike and be like, gosh, you know what I want to do? I want to stretch for an hour. So that just seems unrealistic to me. So a little bit every day is better than a super long session once a week. Good. Okay. So 3 parts to that lower body sequence is First, soft tissue release, using the foam roller to the quads and the outer quads. Number two, the couch stretch. We're going to get into the hip flexor. We're going to lean forward into a little bit of hip extension. And then we're really going to target the psoas by leaning over to the side. And then the third one is we're going to do the adductor rock back. Okay. So I did promise you a little bonus on this, and that is a little glute release. So, oh gosh, I forgot to bring my lacrosse ball. I'm going to grab one. Anthony, entertain the crowd. Just kidding. I'm back. Okay, so take your lacrosse ball. Sit sort of like in a V position like this. If you feel your butt bone and you feel the bone on the back of the outside of your leg, that's your trochanter, that's where your thigh attaches into the hip. Sort of halfway in between there. So you can see there's a little ball. I'm gonna sit on it like this, then I'm just gonna bop this leg up and down this way. Sometimes people think that a seated position is way too intense, so they prefer to lay down and do it like this. Because of the tightness in my hips, I actually think this feels more intense, so I like to start sitting up. So a little bit of glute release. And then from there, what we're gonna do is we're gonna move into a figure four position. So a lot of times we do this figure four position here on our back, hugging, but I actually have a really tight left hip, and this is a good example because you can see if I try to hug here, all that happens is I sort of roll off to the side and I hike my hip up. So I like to do a modified figure four with my feet on the wall. So I come here, hips and knees at 90 degrees, prop your ankle up on your leg, and then use your hand to push down into your thigh to open up that hip. This way our spine stays nice and neutral, and we're able to open that hip without tweaking the knee, which sometimes happens if we're in actually like a yoga pigeon position or something like that, or doing a lot of rolling or sliding. So this is a nice modified figure four. Got it? Questions? Okay. Let me see where we're at. Let me look at my, okay, so you can see quad and IT band release, hip flexor stretch series, adductor rock back. There's some demonstrations, some notes on them, et cetera, et cetera. Okay, the next thing we're gonna do is a shoulder and upper back sequence. So this is what we're talking about here. You can see that a lot of times when we're riding, our shoulders are forward. Okay, our hands are on the handlebars, and we're sort of either looking down at the screen or we're looking up at our instructor or at the road or trying to not get hit by a car. If we're sprinting, we're actually using our arms quite a bit for short periods to sort of stabilize ourselves. As our leg pushes, our other arm has to stabilize. So we actually do use our upper body more than we think. And our lats and our trunk really have to do a lot of work to hold upper body's weight a lot, right? So if you're hinged appropriately at the hips, because all of your instructors are telling you to hinge at the hips, your lats have to do a lot of work to hold you up here, okay? So let's give our shoulders and upper back some love. Get our upper back a bit more open. We're gonna do the same idea. We're gonna do a soft tissue release, then we're gonna do a little bit of sort of active mobility, and then we're gonna do a little bit more sort of passive mobility. We'll talk about next after that. So, ready? Here we go. It's raining in my door. That's kind of sad. Thought it was spring. Okay, so the first thing we're going to do is, I'm going to call this a lat release. Although, to be honest, you're getting into your lat, but you're also getting into a lot of the fascia on the back of the shoulder, a lot of those trunk extensors, okay? So imagine you had your finger and you were going to put it in your armpit and then wrap your hands around. You're going to go for just below that spot on the side of the rib cage and a little bit behind it. So sort of in my armpit here. This would be directly in my armpit. I'm going to roll backwards just a little. Then I'm going to kind of roll up and down, just use my foot to push me up and down until I find some spots that are like, oof, there's a real tight spot. And then what I can do is I can either sort of rotate my trunk. I can punch with my arm up and down to sort of floss that. I can reach up overhead. Whatever you find that's most comfortable for you and that you feel like is really helping you get into that area. For me, I actually, on this one, tend to do a bit more sort of soft tissue flossing up and down. I feel like that's a bit easier. And again, same thing like we did on the quads. We're looking at like 30 to 45 seconds per side. Side one. Side two. And on this side, probably because this is my dominant arm, I actually noticed that the meaty bit up by my armpit, or the back of my rotator cuff, is tighter on me here. So I'm going to kind of get into that first. And then work down the rib cage into my lat and thoracolumbar fascia a bit more. Good. First, soft tissue release. Second, angels. This is quite literally the first thing I want to do when I get off the bike is I want to open my chest. It's my favorite thing to do the minute I get off. So here, foam roller is under my head, running down along my spine. My arms come out like a W. Depending on how tight your shoulders are, you might be able to reach the ground. You might be way up here. That's okay. We're going to squeeze the shoulders down, like you're going to pinch that foam roller in between your shoulder blades, squeezing, squeezing, squeezing. And then you're just going to gently let it come up into a diamond shape. Squeeze down, up and back. Squeeze down, up and back. And again, for the purposes of doing this as a sequence, I may be going to do this about 10 times. If you find that this really helps your shoulder mobility, feel free to do more. Feel free to sort of hang out in this W pec stretch position for a bit longer if you really are craving that. Your shoulders are feeling really, really tight. So like I said about order, first I'm going to open the chest so that when I go into the upper spine, I have the mobility in the front of my chest to allow my spine to extend back. So I'm literally going to roll off my roller, turn my roller 90 degrees, and lie back down on it. So now I'm going to do a thoracic extension, okay? This is a tricky one. There's a lot of moving pieces here. So what you have to do is clasp your hands behind your neck, bring your elbows in close, okay? And the reason that you do this is because if I don't bring my elbows in close and I don't have my hands behind my neck, when I extend, this is just all neck extension. I can do this whole motion with just my head. But I'm actually trying to target this to be in my mid back, somewhere between my shoulder blades and the bottom of my rib cage. So clasp, bring your elbows together, and then extend back. Another thing you want to work on is that you're going to keep your core a little bit tight so that you don't just arch your back here, flare your rib cage up. So keep that rib cage down, make your core keep you honest, use your elbows to protect your neck. If your shoulders are really tight, you might have a hard time really getting them in so tight, so get as tight as you can. Same thing, let's do this about 10 times. And if you guys want, I can always put a little follow along clip online with this so that you could just hit the YouTube thing and play whenever you want to do this. So I usually do about 3 spots. So, 3 or 4 arches back and forth in a couple of different spots, working down towards the base of the spine. Again, you're really only going about as low as your bottom ribs. And then one, maybe a little bit closer up to the neck. You don't obviously want to be rolling this right on your neck. Good. Okay. Then the next one you're going to do is we're going to work into thoracic rotation. So 2 ways we're going to do that. First, we're going to lay on the side. My thigh is going to come right on your foam roller here. Okay. I don't really care what you do with this arm as you're getting into this position, but then you're going to stretch it out this way. Your head's going to come down. If this is really painful on your neck, again, you could put a yoga block or a pillow or something like that under your head. Sometimes people have a hard time with that. So then for the open book, reach forward, open around. So for this first version, our leg is going to stay glued to the foam roller. Okay. And it's going to stay glued to the foam roller because it's going to isolate and stabilize our hips so that all of this rotation is coming from our waist and above in our thoracic spine, our mid back. When we're riding, our thoracic spine is pretty stiff the whole time. By stiff, I mean it's in one position most of the time. You obviously, very rarely are you opening up and around. But this is a motion that we really need to keep mobility in the thoracic spine in order to protect our neck and protect our low back. So again, let's say 10 times. So once you've opened that upper back, now I'm going to kick this foam roller just a little bit farther away, and I'm going to come into a deeper twist. When I start twisting this direction, I'm going to get a lot more of this outside of the top hip and a lot more low back. And that's okay. We have already primed for that. So same thing. You're going to open. And on this full body twist, I actually like to do it 3 times and take a little bit of a break in between. So I take here, I take a really deep breath, and then I exhale out and let that breath sort of get me deeper into that rotation. Deep breath in, deep breath out, deeper into the rotation. Do that about 3 times. You can use this hand on your outside of your knee to kind of counterweight you down. You can see on my side, this hand pops up a little bit. That's okay. You can shimmy your bottom shoulder this direction out from under your body. Everything you can to kind of get you deeper in the twist. Okay, so on that side, I like people to sort of come to the middle and neutralize just a little bit before they throw themselves into the other side. I don't like people throwing themselves from one super deep rotation to another super deep rotation. So give yourself a minute. So for you, you will take the foam roller just to the other side and do it this direction. Roll here. Again, prop that leg up. Stack your hands like a book. And you can see as I come up this way, this hip's not coming with me. I'm going to keep this hip rolled forward onto the roller. And then just open and close your book. I like to give it a little reach and open. Another variety people enjoy is reach, open up and around, just to give you some variations if you want to try some new things. Up and around. Sometimes with cranky shoulders, they don't love that. 10 times like that. Then hips down. Same thing, I'm going to bring my bottom shoulder away from me, out from under my body. And then I'm just going to fully open this direction. Some nice deep breaths to open my low back, the outside of this top hip, and my low spine. As you take a deep breath in, the reason this helps deepen your twist is that your rib cage expands and almost like separates your vertebrae just a little bit, gives you a little bit of space, and then as you relax, you can twist a little bit. Give yourself a little bit of space, let it twist a little bit in. Great. So mid back and upper body mobility, the soft tissue works on the foam roller, the angel, thoracic spine extension, open book times 5 or 10, and a supine twist times about 3. So The bonus on this is everyone's favorite exercise. I'm just kidding, patients hate this exercise. So this is really for your cervical spine. And this is something we give to patients a lot if they're having nerve pain down their arm, if they have like very extreme forward head position. We're trying to get the spine realigned. And it actually feels really great when you get off of a long bike ride. So I'll even do this like at the very beginning of class if I start riding and I'm like, oh gosh, it's there. And what you're going to do, I'm going to turn this way so you can see me in profile of the world's most flattering exercise, is straight spine. You're going to tuck your chin all the way back. You're trying to move your head backwards. So tuck, 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 and then release. Tuck, 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 and release. That looks easy. It's actually really hard when you're stiff. So tuck and release, do that about 5 times. Once you feel like you've gotten this retraction set, then you're going to tuck and try to extend all the way back. Ideally, once you get that lower cervical retraction, you should be able to extend your neck so that your face is parallel with the ceiling, or at least about 10 degrees. So tuck, extend, tuck, extend. It's called cervical retraction extension. Great for keeping your lower cervical spine healthy. Okay, let's go back to so here we are. Lat release, foam roller angel, thoracic spine extension, open book to pec twist, neck mobility. We'll talk about pec release later. Here's some notes for them if you want them. This is pec minor. So or pec major release. If you are really tight in the shoulders, you might want to start with this. You'll put a lacrosse ball or something like that, sort of right in this meaty area where your pec is. Row up and down like this. Okay. Oh, this is a real aggressive stack photo I chose. So this is the low back sequence. This is great for people that have low back pain. And as you can see, this person actually has relatively okay back position here. He's doing an okay hinge position. But honestly, like it's a lot of lumbar flexion when you're on your bike. You know, we try to really get into this more hip back hinged position so we can get some power through the glutes. But you do have quite a bit of rounded spine in a lot of things. So in order to keep your disc nice and healthy and to maintain a position that sort of counteracts sitting all day long and then sitting farther on the bike, we want to work into more lumbar extension, low back extension. So in order to do that, we're going to go through 5 exercises. They're actually not that, this whole sequence is only maybe about 3 minutes. Okay, so first we're going to do a cat cow. So a lot of people know how to do this. Oh, fall down. Not extremely complicated, except for what I would like to point out is just a little bit of like motor control cueing, which would be, if you're thinking about this being for your low back, I want you to drive it from the hips and the pelvis, which means if you start on all fours like this, I want you to start by tucking your tail under. Like if you're a dog, okay, and you're going to tuck your tail under your leg, tuck under to start this cat from the pelvis. Drive it from the pelvis and then come up into a rounded back. If you're like me, you're going to get a lot more round through the mid back than you are from the low back. I'm a little stiff in the low back. And then as you come out into the cow, same thing, I want you to drive it from your tail. So you're really going to stick your tail up, okay? Wag your tail. All of this is going to drive from the hips, curling under, pushing forward. You can also even think about that hip flexor release position where you're squeezing your butt to tuck your tail under and then reverse it. So we're going to move through this about 5 times. Same thing, you could do many more of these, but I want to keep these short and sweet so that if you practice them a couple of times, they become an easy mobility sequence to perform on your own after rides. Good. So we've done a couple of cat cows. Now we're going to rock back into more of a sort of a child's pose position. We're going to walk over into a little side bend. So you're just walking with the top hand, really reaching with that top end and sitting back into the hip. You should feel a nice lat stretch with this. Whole side body is opening. One thing to think about is I don't want you getting this by like really crunching yourself over into a side bend. This is more of a length and reach and sit back into it than it is crunching into your side bend. One side, on the other, creating length with this top hand by crawling it out away from you and really putting that weighting that left hip and this side down into the side bend. Great. The next thing we're going to do is sort of like a Sphinx pose in yoga. So you're going to lay on your belly with your elbows and your forearms underneath your shoulder, like so. Okay. Prone on elbows. Sometimes if you're really stiff in the low back and you've had some low back problems in the past, this might be enough. You might not have to do anything besides this. Just being in this position may be enough of a stretch into lumbar extension for you. And that's totally fine. Hang out like this, take a break, hang out like this. If you want to go a little bit deeper, what you're going to do is you're going to isometrically draw your hands and your forearms back towards your body while you broaden your collarbones and pull forward. You should feel this sort of as a hinge in like the lower thoracic spine, upper lumbar spine, and then kind of relax, pull back, broadening your collarbones, pulling your chest forward. Again, chin is going to kind of tuck back into that same retraction position, and then relax. Do that about 3 or 4 times. Take a break, little wriggle to let your spine neutralize. Then we're going to go into a prone press up. If you've ever had low back pain or nerve pain or anything like that, you know the prone press up is a staple in low back rehab. It's similar to some moves that we do in yoga, namely cobra and or up dog, but I call this one a lazy cobra because really in a prone press up, when you're trying to get into the low back, your arms are going to do all of the work. So your hands come underneath your shoulders here like this, and your lower body is dead body. So everything is limp from the hips down. Your hips are going to stay really nice and heavy. Then you're just going to press up just through your arms. This whole time, my glutes are staying loose and heavy because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to fulcrum through my lower spine. That's a good thing. Sometimes people get really worried that extending their spine, back bending is too crunchy into your low back, but in fact, this is a really healthy position for our discs and can alleviate a lot of pain. This may be problematic if you're very arthritic, if you have quite a bit of stenosis, that sort of thing. But again, in that situation, you should be coming to a PT anyway, and we can sort of modify the exercise for you. So up and down, prone press up, probably about 5 or 6 times. Lazy cobra. Nothing's really working but your arms. Bonus, jacked tricep. Everybody likes that, right? And then once you've gone through that, I like to flush that back out with a couple of cat cows. Just little easy spinal mobility. The last thing I'm going to do in the low back sequence is actually not a low back. It's really more for the back of the leg. It's a down dog variation. So hands here, hop up into straight legs. I want you to walk, think about that lumbar extension you just did. I want you to bend your knees. Be honest with yourself. Bend your knees as much as you need to keep your back flat. If your legs are straight, but you're here in a really arched back, you're not doing yourself any favors. So bend your knees enough that your back can stay straight. You can stick your tail up in the air. And then from here, walk your dog. Get just an alternating calf stretch, hamstring stretch. Keep your core nice and tight, side to side. Nice way to get into the back of the legs in sort of a more dynamic way than just a static stretch. Come back down. Cat cow a couple more times if you want. Done. That whole sequence should take you about 3 minutes. One thing that I did want to add on as a bonus to this is just a little bit of soft tissue work that you can do. So I like to be able to get into the hamstrings and the calves using the lacrosse ball. Calves are really easy. Lacrosse ball goes underneath your calf. Here, if this is enough for you, wiggle the leg up and down. If that's not enough, cross this leg over. That's quite a bit of weight. Pump up and down like that. Do it on both sides, kind of roll from side to side. See, like, do you need this on the outer side of the calf a little more? Inner side of the calf a little bit more. Switch legs. For the hamstring, let's do it seated. You see this? Yes. Hamstring goes, this goes underneath your leg. The nice thing about this is you can get into a hamstring muscle release without necessarily putting the hamstring on a crazy amount of stretch. We're doing a traditional hamstring stretch and we're not super flexible. Sometimes we struggle to really feel that. Here we can really sort of kind of grind out a little bit of that muscular restriction, decrease some of that tone. Again, you could do this before you do a hamstring stretch and you'll probably get quite a lot more mobility. Any of these things that we do with the lacrosse ball, you could probably do with a Theragun if you have it at home. The only thing that I would encourage you is if you're using the Theragun is to still try to do some active mobility with it, right? If you're trying to get into the pets with the Theragun, like still try to do a little bit of movement. If you're trying to get into the quads, do a little bit of movement with it. And be careful with the gun. Like sometimes we get into that hurt so good scenario. Be careful with the gun that you're not just overly traumatizing the area. Patients a lot of times are like, oh gosh, I just my quads are so tight. I used the gun and then I was like so sore and bruised. Like it's like everything else. You're probably going to do a little bit more damage. I would rather you've done it every day for a little bit than really go after it like crazy. So at this point, does anybody have any questions that I need to address? I don't think so. I think we're doing good so far. Here's some explanations, et cetera, et cetera. Hamstring release, calf release. Oh gosh, that guy hasn't worked here for a very long time. It's an old picture. Okay, so have a good ride. This is my really old road bike. Don't judge me. It's been my best friend for like about 15 years, so I'm really reluctant to give it up. I have a nice new one, but I only ever ride this one. Remember, even if you train properly and your form is perfect, the very nature of cycling is going to start to change your body eventually. Your flexed hips, hand forward, head up is slowly but surely going to lead to some imbalances in your musculature. And you have to actively work to counteract this to prevent pain and injury and to improve your performance ultimately. If you're always battling your own body, you're never going to be able to train effectively. Only you can make the change. Nobody's going to be able to do it for you. Your instructor is not going to be able to change it. All the riding in the world is not going to be able to change it. You have to put in the work to really keep it healthy. On the flip side, remember, mobility is a practice. Keep at it. Don't get frustrated. Keep inching towards the finish line, and I promise you will see progress. It may be slow and steady, but you will get there. I wanted to give you guys a couple of resources. If you want anything, there's a lot of releases and exercises on our YouTube page. Just search for React Physical Therapy. Our homepage has tons of videos and of all sorts, really. If you have any more questions, I have answers. So come in for free injury screener consultation anytime. You feel free to email me or direct message me on Instagram or message React Physical Therapy on Instagram, and somebody else can get back to you. We have several locations. I personally work at the Lincoln Park location. I'm kind of by the Apple store, but we have a West Loop location. We have a Lakeshore East location down by the Aqua building. We have a location in Wilmette, a location in Deerfield. So we're all over. We're happy to help you. We do telehealth. We can almost always get you in within a couple of days, probably 24 hours for an eval. So just let us know anything you need. Here is my contact information, Instagram, email. This is my phone number here. You can get in touch with us however you'd like. And feel free to reach out and let me know if you have any questions, and happy riding. Okay, thanks guys. Thanks, Anthony. Bye, everyone. Enjoy the snow.